Hello everyone again. My name is Konstantin. I'm from Titan Network. I'm Chief Strategy Officer here. What we do at Titan Network is essentially we're aggregating idle storage, bandwidth, and compute from different nodes around the globe. You can install Titan nodes on top of your mobile phone, on your app, on your laptop. Anything from a Raspberry Pi to a data center works. We aggregate those resources. We bundle them together, and we provide them as a cloud service to the customers across the globe. So basically, it's a people-powered cloud infrastructure that on one side bundles all of those idle resources and really leverages the potential of people's devices to do some compute jobs around the world. But at the same time, it serves as a really great onboarding layer to the bean infrastructure because we see a lot of different use cases at the bean right now that are coming very highly verticalized. What I mean by that is they're building either very extensive GPU resource or very extensive CPU resource or storage resource like Filecoin does here. But what we typically see in a customer profile that we worked with, they're not only caring about, oh, I only need CPU, I only need GPU, I only need some other specific resource that is available or not available to customers around the globe. So whenever we share that high density, very specialized resource, they usually need something around it as a wrapper. And what we saw a great opportunity for Titan Network to do is to provide this incentive structure and availability to connect to other DPIN resources. And that's where we are coming from edge DPIN space, but really at the same time building the connectivity from edge DPIN to the rest of the world. And as Paul asked me a few days ago, like, hey, can you tell us about the customer profiles that you are working with? What are the real biggest pains that you are facing? And what are the biggest customers that come to you to use the resources? And in our case, again, quickly recap. Titan Network is a digital resource L1 network. We create incentive layer for global idle edge resources, and we orchestrate DPIN cloud services to provide them to a customer based on those edge resources. There are two largest customer profiles for Titan Network that we look at the moment. We are at the testnet stage. We have reached more than 500,000 nodes across the globe. We cover more than 130 countries. And we have not only access to those nodes by itself, but we also connect and integrate with other DPIN projects such as Filecoin. We are capable of onboarding data to Filecoin. We are working with Lilypad. We're working with other GPU providers that can be connected to Titan Network and provide availability from the resources that we already have. So for us, the two best type of customers that we faced with and we worked with already in our testnet stages, and we have POCs or paid customers, either they come and rent a large amount of nodes at once, and in this case, obviously we are willing to spend enough resource to integrate them. We're helping with all the pipeline, we're helping with BD, contracts, et cetera, making sure that they have all the functionality and the feature they onboard to Titan Network or the solution they onboard to Titan Network works precisely without fault, similar to what you would expect on a traditional cloud infrastructure. Those usually look for long-term contracts, and they want to ensure that their long-term contract is significantly cheaper than they would otherwise get on AWS or some other cloud provider. Otherwise, it's not very interesting for them to spend resources and time to try to switch, and maybe it doesn't work. Obviously, we ensure all the 99.999% that it works, and it's built on the same infrastructure using cloud containers, basically. So this is one type. And this is where we're happy to spend amount of resources and time to really get those large rentals available on Titan Network. But on the flip side, what we see more and more, while we are working on a large rental, your solution has to be publicly available. And someone should be able to go on the internet on GitHub, go and grab the lines of code that you have developed as a tutorial and integrate to your solution without talking to you. This is kind of small rentals with small independent projects. And by small, I don't really diminish how much they impact the Titan Network. It's rather, they're usually not so many nodes that they rent at once, or they rent it through a traditional platform, so they don't need an executive access, or they don't need an oversight pipeline. For them, what really matters is that it works out of the box. They don't need to call me or someone from the team or engineering team to really implement it. And obviously, it's not very organized stream of customers that come one way or another. It's rather, someone used our solution in this place, someone used it there. They're starting to talk on GitHub to us. They're starting to talk on Telegram to us. And this is, it's not something that you can directly control sometimes. Obviously, you can do better marketing, you can do better outreach, you can make your solution easier to use out of the box, and that definitely helped Titan Network to really scale those customers that comes in small rentals. But what we saw as well is that they're also super, super chaotic. So you, regardless of how much you try, not always you will be finding those customers on board, and that's what we see as like a balance between either we get a super large rentals or many, many small ones. And there is, to what I have seen so far, no very distinct in between. It's either one of those larger groups, and obviously they are not polar, they're on a like ranger scale or something. And just touching base on what do they actually need. When we're talking about large customers, just to reiterate, they are definitely interested in reliability. They want to ensure that you have contracts, you have security, they can do a proper contract with your entity, you have KYC in place, they can pay through the traditional payment channels, they're happy with, it has to be as similar to traditional cloud infra in terms of contracting, payments, simplicity of utility, or they are not very convinced to switch. And lastly, but more importantly here, is they have to have really great incentives to switch to you. Otherwise, either the CEO or C-level will not even look at it, or engineers afterwards will be like, yeah, it takes 6 months, 12 months to integrate from what we currently have, even though no one really knows and they haven't started on the, or they haven't even looked at repo. But they still will say like, yeah, we don't have enough incentives, we don't want to proceed. On the flip side, this is again, this was the large whale customers. On the flip side, we have small, tiny customers that can integrate by themselves. All they care about is simple integration, clear instruction, and autonomy in use. If you're not hitting all those 3 tick boxes, they don't really care. They may find you on GitHub, they may find you somewhere else. I think for the Web3 space, it feels more native here, like, oh, I want to use some other solution or protocol. Can I go on the website and figure out how to make use of it for myself? Oh, yeah. If that's the case, that's great. If that's not the case, you're not hitting those customers in a very frequent amount, and then it's not a significant impact on a business whatsoever. Yeah. So, last but not least, if we're talking about those customers and we're saying like, hey, this is an incredible amount of resource, we still want to get both types of customers to our scene to make sure that we're leveraging the resources as much as possible, and Titan gets great outreach, get feedback and follow-ups and the information that we have all the way through. Where do those customers exist? Where do we see those values, and why do they care to integrate Titan Network and as a result integrate other solutions that we have available in our buckets, whether that's pipeline to Filecoin, where we also now serve as a great onboarding pipeline or data availability layer. And we also ensure that once you uploaded content to Filecoin, you can still retrieve it through the Titan network. And that's where we'll find a very sweet balance between what we can offer in-house versus what are the partner customers offering to us. So for the whale part, they all primarily exist in traditional Web 2 infrastructure at the moment. What we saw a lot is like there are sophisticated people who want to start building using Web3 services. Maybe they have read somewhere about it. Maybe they have found the utility there. What was a very convincing factor from our side was we have more than 100,000 nodes available right now for you to grab. And people who are building VPN, VPS service, web data scraping, or other solutions that on one side need very high regional availability, and at the same time they need to have many access to residential IP addresses. Those are incredibly perfect customers to Titan Network. And basically those are coming from traditional Web 2 infra because they have reached enough scale to be interested in such offerings. And at the same time their solutions are interested in really specific tailors that Web3 is better suited than anyone in traditional infra. So you usually see those whales as customer-facing solutions integrating, but at the same time looking to save costs via a solution. This is what we found at Titan Network. On the flip side, again, the smaller customers, all they care about, they don't want to have a meeting with you to integrate. If they have to go and talk to you, they will use something else because there is a better approach, there is a better availability. And they do not really exist in traditional pipeline channels with traditional exchanges. Where we find them the most was Telegram, Discord, or GitHub. For Telegram cases, we actually built a new onboarding pipeline with TG, where you can open an app, directly upload content from an app to Titan Network, and it will be backed up by Filecoin in 24 hours, given there is enough demand from the network and there is enough of a batch for the network to upload. So this is, you really have to be where your target customers are. And for us, with all of those small uploads and batches, we really see a great opportunity in being on Telegram, being used as a bot. As soon as you can simplify this gap between, hey, where I learned from you, and how can I quickly can start working with you. That's where we found a good success. If people learn about us on Telegram, we have to be working out of the box in Telegram. If they use GitHub, we have to be available on GitHub. If we use Discord, you have to develop a Discord bot, and people start uploading to it with a fair, smaller amounts that large customers could provide, but over time, you can build the adoption and build enough awareness that they will turn into large customers. And that's where we're seeking a conversion and actively helping that to develop. And that's what we at Titan Network does. So to sum it all up, with all of these types of fishes, and I don't know what timing I still have, but generally it's either fish or be fished. Here is our channels. You can find us, you can talk to me. If you want to use Titan Network, get in touch. I'll be happy to support your solution or your business onboarding customers to the Web3 space. Thank you.
I do want to talk about, so you tier to Filecoin, and the blinking is all part of the presentation, so you pay attention. Sorry about that. I do want to talk about your conversion is somewhat easier, right? In that you're taking people that are on Cloudflare, their data is already public, therefore migrating it, if it's a large scale customer, is in some respects potentially lower touch than these large data set migrations that we talk about that might be
Totally,
in an on-prem
yes.
environment. So do talk about, in some respects, why maybe it's easier, but it's also harder, at least on the price point, right? Because it's a very competitive market in the CDN space. But do talk about this conversion, right? So your POC, at least compared to, say, a Filecoin migration, is potentially easier, right? So you might already have product market fit in that it's easier to show the proof of concept. But then when it comes to the migration, like these large scale deals that are going to pay all the bills, right? Because you're going to send all of the payments through these nodes that they're using. Like, where is that high touch? Because it's probably useful for people in this room to understand that when we worked on some of those larger migrations, that just because we do them and show them it works, doesn't mean they're going to convert.
Totally.
So use it as use a high number of like 100,000 assets, right? Say there are 100,000 cat pictures that need to be geographically distributed, and they're already on Cloudflare.
Yeah. What we see a big hurdle and big pain with transitions. We go on the multiple meetings with C-suite, they're like, oh yeah, super exciting, and we see the savings and costs, and we see like blah, 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 blah. We're kind of interested. Maybe there is enough incentives, maybe they're not, but they're not telling it to us directly, and that's a fair business practice. What we saw a big struggle in it was like between C-suite agreeing and technical team integrating us is a very, very large gap. And that usually is a very large gap in the Web3 space, where people are like, okay, I'm not sophisticated. I go somewhere, I check. It's not super clear. I don't want to touch it. There is not enough like stars on GitHub, or there is not enough follow-ups or questions. I don't see sufficient docs and people using it. So that's where engineering team starts to not sabotage, but like delay, and then C-suite loses interest. If they cannot get the value and turnover really, really fast, then they kind of lost interest and they move to something else. And so for us, onboarding is really hand-handling customers to not only finalize the deal, but finalize the technical integration, finalize and make sure that their resources are available, their resources and content is working, whether it's CDN, just regular cloud integration, whether that's storage availability, all of that still has to be working until you really uploaded the content. Only then you can leave them and make them happy about the resource. If they have agreed on the terms but failed to integrate, it's still nothing. And that's where we face a lot of challenges to really close those people in and make sure the integration happens when we are available.
Let's talk about one last question here. I think that is important, is that the Web3 customers that we're talking about, do they actually exist? Because when I look at a lot of these Web3 companies, like, why do they need a CDN? Most of them don't have enough geographic needs. So, are you seeing that? I know we've talked about a few, but...
Yeah, we actually see that. And the interest where we see
But this is a Cloudflare migration? Like, they're already on Cloudflare?
This is not
or
a
you're
Cloudflare migration.
First?
They build customer-facing applications, whether that's a platform, whether that's something else, and they either envision already have a large volume of content that they need to either stream to someone, make available, whether that is a new gaming or NFTs or visual content that they want to deliver all across the world. And that's where you particularly want to look at customer-facing profiles, because their customers care whether they receive the content in few seconds or milliseconds, or they have to hit the refresh button again and again and again until you kind of get the content, or maybe not. So that's where they care about customer experience much more, and that's where we see a use case in CDN, and it's growing. So that's why, for example, we were caring a lot about building on TG and being available on Telegram, because that's where all their community channels sit in. And if their community can use our application out of the box and can have it in their app as an extension of their Telegram, that's when they're happy about it. They can see it in Telegram. They can see it inside their app. There are multiple channels to which they can see and poke the same content, and that's where they're starting to use our resources.
Good. Any questions for... Titan's launched. It's got customers working. I encourage you to actually test it out. They've got a great user experience to get data on. And then the tiering to Filecoin is, how are we doing that? It's 30 days? Untouched, it gets tiered, right? Yeah.
Well, we are right now, it's a little bit two-sided. Since we are working with many smaller customers as well, for big customers it's tiered, it's available. For smaller customers, like whenever you upload through Telegram, we have to wait until the batch is large enough so we can put it into a deal. So this is kind of like, you need to tinker it on the back end to make sure that you have a sufficient amount of content to make someone interested to back it up. But once that happens, yeah, it's possible. And I believe that kind of solves with scale. When you have enough content per day uploaded, you can follow the deals pretty easily.